Who ain't fond of a good spine-tingling yarn round the flickering campfire? Cowboys of the Old West, they had a real hankering for 'em. Them Old West legends, they still linger round these parts today, all thanks to that love for a good scare. From them, strange critters and tales spun by the Native Americans, to stories of departed ladies and young'uns. Some of the creepiest and hair-raising ghost tales hail from the Wild West. And there have been times when folks themselves turned into legends, their ghostly presence giving birth to fresh tales that'll make your skin crawl when the sun dips below the horizon. Now, there's certain Old West folks who just ain't ready to fade into oblivion. Jesse James and the Lost Dutchman, they may dim with time, but they stick around in our memories. Same goes for them terrifying Old West phantoms, meant to give cowboys and young'uns the heebie-jeebies. They're here to stay, haunting us and serving up new spine-chilling nightmares. So reckon you're bold enough to dive into a slice of history and maybe pick up a fresh ghostly tale or two. No shame if you'd rather hunker down under the covers. Them tales can rattle the bravest of souls. Before we proceed further, if you are new here, please subscribe our channel, American Old West Tales, and share it with your friends. Your support means the world to us. Back in the early 1800s, South Texas and Mexico were in a real pickle about where the border should rightly be. Some said it was the Nueces River, others claimed it was the Rio Grande River. But with no agreement in sight, that in-between place became a no-man's land, ripe for the picking by local cattle rustlers. Now, one outlaw in particular, a scoundrel named Vidal, was as mean as they come, and the local rangers decided to teach him a lesson he wouldn't forget. When they caught up with him, they didn't pull no punches. They put him down, chopped off his noggin, and then strapped his lifeless body upright on a wild Mustang like he was still riding the range. And then, they let that horse run wild, a stark reminder to anyone who thought about crossing the line that this was the kind of justice they'd meet. It's a bit like that tale of Sleepy Hollow and the Headless Horseman, you see. Many a cowboy, even clear into the 21st century, has claimed to spot a headless outlaw known as El Muerto, riding through the Rio Grande area, a legend that just won't fade away. Jesse Woodson James, a notorious outlaw, train bandit, bank marauder, and gang chief, rode the wild frontier between the 1860s and the 1880s. His days of reckoning came on April 3rd, 1882, when Robert Ford finally brought him down. But the tales of his demise might have been a mite premature. Whispers of his lingering presence have echoed through the winds for nigh on a century near his kin's homestead in Kearney, Missouri. As if that ain't enough, yonder lights flicker to life without rhyme nor reason. Security contraptions capture movements that defy explanation, and eerie voices echo in chambers thought to be devoid of company. Legend has it that this is the proof of the phantom gunslinger's return to the hearth, never more to wander the plains. In the days of the Old West, the Native Americans shared their ancient tales and beliefs with the brave frontiersmen who ventured into their lands. Out of these exchanges, many legends were born. One haunting story revolved around a small bird, aptly named the Death Bird. According to Native American lore, this bird would appear before a person's demise, either as a warning to spare their life or as a grim harbinger of the inevitable, signaling that it was time to select a coffin. As the late 1800s rolled around, even cowboys began to witness this spectral avian. Its presence often foretold impending death nearby, whether it was a call for aid to save a fellow frontiersman or a sign that the cowboy himself was embarking on his final journey. Some claimed they could hear its eerie, piercing cry, even if they couldn't spot the ethereal bird. Not all ghostly tales from those times were spine-tingling. Some carried a sorrowful note rather than fear. In the year 1861, within the bustling Buckskin Joe mining camp, there dwelled a dance hall belle known as Silver Heels. Adored by the miners and hailed as a beauty, she basked in their generous gifts and admiration. But, as with most beautiful things, her joyous dancing days were numbered. One harsh winter, a fierce outbreak of smallpox swept through the camp, disrupting the merriment. Silver Heels ceased her dancing and devoted herself to aiding the sick and comforting the dying, even assisting in their burials. Yet, when the worst of the sickness had subsided, Silver Heels vanished without a trace. Legend has it that she too fell victim to the smallpox scourge, her once beautiful visage marred beyond recognition. In solitude, she concealed herself until her final moments, a date unknown to all. Whispers persist that to this very day, a ghostly figure veiled in sorrow can be glimpsed, wandering the cemetery, placing flowers upon the graves. Even in the afterlife, Silverheels continues her quest to bring solace to the miners she held so dear. In the present day, most folks reckon Bigfoot as a colossal, ape-like critter, part man, part beast. But in days of yore, tales often painted him as a warrior spirit. Back in 1868, a troop of travelers traversing a stagecoach road found themselves in a tussle with Cherokees. They recounted one Cherokee who stood out, colossal and beastly in appearance, and claimed they'd laid him low during the fracas. They dubbed the man Bigfoot on account of his supposedly whopping 18-inch long feet. According to some historians, there indeed was a Native American warrior bearing that moniker. Did he truly meet his end in that skirmish, or did he slip away to wander the trails? More often than not, stagecoach drivers and natives would spin tales of his ghost haunting the trail, still an immense and spectral warrior, covered in hair and underbrush. By that reckoning, Bigfoot might just be an ancient Cherokee spirit rather than a missing link. Though it might have originated as a Mexican yarn, this eerie and spine-tingling tale found its way across the breadth of the Old West. Depending on the telling, Maria was either the spouse of a prosperous husband who began neglecting her, or a lady of the night who reveled in revelry. In either rendition, her heart turned bitter, and she grew resentful of her two young boys, succumbing to fits of madness and rage. She led them to a river and tragically drowned both. When she regained her senses, she realized the terrible deed she'd committed and tried to rescue them from the watery depths, but it was too late. Her cries of anguish echoed through the night as she met her own end not long after. As the legend goes, in the dead of night, near rivers in the southwest, you might still catch the lamentations of a woman. "Where are my children?" Parents caution their youngsters not to venture outdoors, lest they be spirited away by her or meet the same watery fate as her sons. In the heyday of mining, prospectors often had trusty canine companions by their side. These dogs served as both comrades and safeguards, alerting their owners to potential threats and serving as fierce, unyielding protectors. Some of these four-legged companions were trained to be downright ferocious, even turning on their own masters. As a result, many a miner chose to put them down or abandon them, rather than risk bringing them back to civilization. Should you find yourself headed to the mines near El Dorado Canyon, you'd best be prepared to hightail it out of there in a hurry. Tales abound of menacing growls, snapping jaws, eerie canine shapes, and even unexplained assaults by otherworldly beasts. These spectral demon dogs continue to stand guard over the claims in the area, even in the hereafter. Marshal Fred White is a bona fide Wild West legend. He donned the badge as the inaugural lawman of Tombstone, Arizona, a place notorious for its shootouts and lawlessness during the mid to late 1800s. Any man willing to step into that hornet's nest and attempt to impose order and justice was either plumb crazy or a brilliant strategist, and Fred White might have been a tad of both. For a spell, he managed to quell the violence and make the town a mite safer than it had been. Ironically, he didn't meet his end in some dramatic shootout akin to the famous gunfight at the OK Corral, which transpired in Tombstone, but rather from an accidental gunshot wound to a rather sensitive area. While the region is rumored to be teeming with myriad ghosts, one specter reigns supreme. Even in the hereafter, Fred White continues to serve as the ghostly guardian of law and order in the dusty town of Tombstone. If you ever find yourself with the opportunity to pay a visit to the ghost town of Bodie, you're in for a real trip back in time. This old gold mining town serves as an eerily quiet and deserted museum of days gone by, boasting a slew of well-preserved structures you can meander through and explore at your leisure. But do tread carefully, partner, 'cause Bodie is teeming with spirits. Furthermore, the many restless souls there reckon there might be hundreds of them, come in all sorts of flavors. You'll encounter some specters who ain't too keen on grown folks, but take a shine to playing with youngsters. There are cooks who are still slaving away to whip up victuals for their customers, and you best believe there are some ornery lawmen who are said to keep a watchful eye on them streets. If they catch you pilfering anything from the town, they'll be tailing you with their ghostly tricks. You'll be in for a heap of bad luck, misfortune, and woe until that pilfered item finds its way back. The visitor center even keeps a mighty big scrapbook chock full of letters from folks who've had to make amends for their thieving ways. Now, the Navajo folk reckon that skinwalkers were medicine folks or witches, not quite human and not fully livin', who got no love for outsiders and a real knack for hostility. They could mimic any sound, take on any form, and had no qualms about taking down folks, critters and young'uns. Basically, anyone who crossed their path was fair game. Many locals still keep their lips sealed about skinwalkers for fear of reprisal on themselves and their kin. In the Old West, particularly in California, Arizona, and New Mexico, cowboys would murmur about these otherworldly critters in hushed tones. When someone up and vanished out there in the desert, folks often pointed their fingers at these spectral beings. So, if you ever come across someone spilling tales about run-ins with a skinwalker, best advise them to keep their voices down. You never rightly know who might be eavesdropping on that conversation. One of the most sought-after prizes of the Old West is the Lost Dutchman's gold mine. Somewhere around the vicinity of Superstition Mountain in Arizona during the late 1800s, they say they found the lifeless body of a fella named Waltz, a German soul weighed down by sacks of precious gold. They reckoned old Waltz gave up the ghost from sheer exhaustion, lugging those hefty bags. And so, the wild pursuit of his evidently bountiful gold mine got underway. But now, brace yourself for the spine-chilling part. Folks who ventured out seeking that treasure started meeting mysterious and gruesome fates. Gunshots in the dead of night, disappearing without a trace, some poor souls found with only parts of them left, and the like. To this day, folks keep up the search, but it's told that the spirits of them who tried before, and even old Waltz himself, stand guard over that secret stash. They're keeping it tucked away, and they won't hesitate to snuff out the light of anyone who dares to get too close.